Good morning, everybody. How are we today? I haven't done a little talking video for a while. It's been mega busy. Lots going on behind the scenes, lots going on, not so much behind the scenes. And yeah, so I'm gonna hop on here and give you one of Rebecca's ramblings today. First of all, how are you? Hope you're good in the internet world. There seems to be, the algorithm is doing its thing recently. I'm meeting a load of beautiful musicians, and just the route that my life is taking me, my algorithm is so different to when I began. I just wanted to touch on, I do my storytelling, or I do my motivational little chit chats. I just wanted to speak on something that is kind of happening in my own life and continues to happen. There's this cycle that tends to happen. And a lot of people, in the spiritual community are talking about the year of the snake ending and the year of the horse. We're entering the year of the horse. And you might ask, what does that mean? And, whether you put a lot of representation on astrology or spirituality or whatever, just the principle of it from a psychological perspective is a lot about, the year of the snake is having to shed old versions of ourselves in order to grow. And, this has been, well, we all do it, whether we realize it or not. I'm not a little baby anymore. I am a woman. I know how to walk. I know how to talk. So in that respect, you can, sometimes your growth goes overlooked, and then sometimes it's blimmin' obvious. But the thing that seems to be happening at the moment is you're always presented with opportunities to better your growth or to move into a version of you that is fuller, brighter, more expansive. And if you haven't been there before, it can be quite intimidating. It can feel quite scary. But from doing this over and pushing past those moments of fear, I've experienced amazing opportunities and amazing areas of growth and things that I never thought I'd be able to do, let's put it that way. And if I had been presented with opportunities in the past and I'd listened to that inner voice that said, you're useless, or you have imposter syndrome, or, someone else could do it better, all those little thoughts, they will hold you restricted and they will hold you in a cage. And let's go back 10 years. I've been a yoga teacher for a good decade or so, but I remember training to be that yoga teacher. And I was qualified. I'd done the training. I'd been to Devon and I'd done the practical training. It was all bish bosh. And I knew my stuff. But moving on from that qualification to then putting it into action and creating students and starting to teach physically without the buffer of, the training or the people that were alongside me during that training process. I remember that, my cat's just joining me. I remember that moment of having to have a word with myself, basically. And I started small. I started at a level that I felt capable of. And that for me at that time was inviting a few friends, I think I had 6 students, to my home and teaching them on a regular basis in my dining room. And so every Monday or whatever it was, they'd come over and I'd teach. And I was so nervous. I couldn't teach without looking at the piece of paper and following my plan. And, I'd have that lump in my throat where I was like, and then one day my friend was like, well, why don't you apply for this job in the leisure centre and, these various yoga clubs? And I was like, because my instinct was, well, who am I? I'm not qualified. I felt a fraud. I completely felt a fraud. And then I just knew that I had to have a word with myself. And so I applied for this job. I got it instantly. And then before I know it, I was thrown into teaching yoga in leisure centres, in clubs, in schools. And I had all my equipment and I'd turn up and I would just rinse and repeat what I knew. And I can't tell you how quickly it happened, but very quickly I just became known as one of the main yoga teachers in this company that I joined. And I was apparently the most long-standing yoga teacher there. And then COVID hit after a few years and I was thrown into a deep end again. I was having to teach people through a video screen on a Zoom call. So you didn't have that sort of practical being able to adjust them or have that kind of feeling of community. So it was very different. It felt a bit estranged. I was teaching people that were visually impaired. So these people not only were not in the room with me, but they could not see me. So I had to learn to completely adjust the way that I taught. And it had to be very vocal so that they could hear my instructions and they understood what position I was encouraging them to get into. And my brain had to go into the neural pathways to teach had to adjust in order for me to be able to facilitate those classes. And yet they turned out to be some of the most rewarding classes, and the relationships that I built with those people. We looked forward to that evening class, and it made those students feel like something that was potentially inaccessible to them became accessible, and that brought me so much joy and so much reward to be able to offer that. Anyway, my point was, I'd gone from scared stiff in my bedroom, or like I'll just teach in my house with a few friends, to traveling all around the UK I was doing like school year 10 exams for PE and meditation, and I was able to incorporate, and basically I had the freedom to make these classes the way I wanted them to. And anyway, I cut a long story short, that took me into doing all my own classes and various things. And I didn't need the piece of paper in front of me. I didn't have that scared voice. I knew exactly. I could walk into a room without any preparation because I'd done it. And the difference it made just by doing it made all the difference in the world. And my point today is, there is a point. We're always going to be faced with new challenges and things that we maybe feel incapable of, or it's a stretch, and you can't imagine that version of yourself. You can only see the version of you in this moment. However, I do get dreams and I do get visions, and I have had the knowledge to know where I'm going. However, there's always going to be a version of me that has to make changes and has to do away with those old ways of thinking or those limiting beliefs in order to step into that version that exists. There are versions of you that exist that you haven't embraced yet. And I also feel like if the moments come where you're being presented with things to change or go a different route or take training, and that little small voice of, not very nice voice comes in, try and work out where it's coming from and sort of say, yes, but is this a desire? And if the desire is stronger, then ignore that little voice and just try and see what comes out. Because if I hadn't tried, I would never have experienced half the things I've experienced in my life. And life's short. Let's just utilize all of your gifts and things. If you're not there yet, then you'll learn, and trial and error and rinse and repeat will, before long, like I said, it will just become second nature to you. So my little message today is believe in yourself and push past those fears, because you don't know what's waiting on the other side of those fears. I love you today.